We'd like to welcome everyone. This is Transportation Subcommittee 3. We have several bills before us today, and we will move into the docket. The chairman is here, Chairman Yancey, and I think we will entertain Chairman Yancey's bill first. Chairman, if you would.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to address the committee first. However, today is a milestone in the service of Delegate Keene. For years, he has worked diligently to try and be the first person to address a committee with one of his bills. Yep. And I think the whole room joins me in congratulating Delegate Keene. While I appreciate the privilege of addressing first, I am going to be afraid to let Delegate Keene on this momentous occasion address the committee.
Delegate Keene.
Well, the rest of the story is there's a tradition that the first bill dies, right? And so, yeah, so I guess. Yeah,
Mr. Chairman has two bills before.
Yeah, well, oh yeah.
Double or nothing.
Mr. Chairman, and members, I really appreciate the time. We're actually joking about this because in all my subcommittees and committees that I've been in front of, I don't think I've ever been the first bill up ever. We just can't sign up in fast enough. So it worked out well. I have a House bill. Let's start with 1926. It was a huge year, and 1926 is a bill that was brought to my attention by a gentleman who lives in my neighborhood. He's not a constituent directly, but he is very much in my community because he happens to be in his day job, he happens to be a journalist. But he reached out to me and to my state senator saying that he was recently in a car accident and on the 495 Beltway, which for those of you in Northern Virginia know, and that at first the woman who sideswiped him said, yeah, I don't have insurance, I'm really sorry, what have you. By the time he tried to get to the bottom of it, she changed the story, said, actually, it wasn't my fault, it was your fault. And so he resolved it eventually with uninsured motorist plan. But he said, it'd be great if I can get the video footage of that accident so I can prove that it wasn't my fault, it was her fault. And when they called VDOT, VDOT said, we don't maintain or retain the video tape of that highway or anywhere else. Not only will it be cost prohibitive, but it raises a lot of privacy concerns and such. So they asked, the gentleman asked me and our state senator, why is it that VDOT doesn't retain the records? And I said, I don't know, that's a good question. So that's really what the bill does. I fully understand, based on the fiscal impact, it's going to be a tough time to do this right off the bat. But Mr. Chairman, if I can do two things. One is I have a letter from the gentleman who couldn't join us today, but he just wanted to make sure that all the members heard the story directly from him. So it's a story which I gave you the synopsis of. And number two is I fully recognize and appreciate that even though we don't have the fiscal impact statement yet, based on VDOT's analysis, it'll cost, the first couple of years it might not cost anything as they prepare it, but as they ramp up, it will have some cost impact. So given the fiscal impact and being a fiscally responsible and conservative person myself, I don't think that it would make sense for us to pursue this legislation this year. But if I can at least maybe entertain just a couple of minutes to hear from VDOT what their policy is today, what they can possibly do, what they cannot do, and what the policy reasons might be, so that as you all consider these issues going forward, at some point in the future we may have some reasonable, maybe a pilot program, something that says, let's try recording some videos for at least a duration, a short duration. I do understand that they do some live streaming, so it's not the technology that's the issue, it's the cost factor and the policy questions about privacy, retention, FOIA, all those other issues. So I don't have anybody that's speaking on my behalf today other than the gentleman who sent me the email, but if the committee would like to, I understand that VDOT would have some opinions about this issue.
Okay. Would you like us, please?
Mr. Chair, Joanne Maxwell from VDOT. Again, state that the agency has no position on the bill, and we appreciate the opportunity to talk to Delegate Keene and his aide. Just to spot a few issues at this point. Certainly there are costs of implementation, and Delegate Keene is correct. We do not record the camera feeds on interstates, etc. We don't record to the extent we have traffic cameras at stoplights now. I'm not talking about photo red. I'm just talking about cameras to monitor traffic at stoplights. We do not record those feeds. The reason we do not do that, number one, is for the expense. But understanding that these cameras were established not to serve as any sort of evidentiary role or historical role. They are intended to be real-time a means of real-time assessing and evaluating traffic, and no more. So it's how we keep our eyes on the roads, how we look and see how the roads are operating, how traffic's moving, et cetera. That is the purpose of those cameras. The concerns or the issues that we've spotted is if we were to change that, and if the VDOT were required to retain these photos or these videos for whatever period of time, it would change the tenor of that system. It would change the purpose of that system, and would quickly become one, it would change from one of, to just assess traffic and help manage traffic incidents to one of an evidentiary nature. And I will say that, at least in this legislation, there were, in other cases in the Commonwealth, when you see code sections put together where we're monitoring, where pictures are taken, for instance, for photo red, for tolling, video tolling, there are very careful safeguards that are put on that information, protections that are very limited in who can request the information, who's entitled to receive it, circumstances under which we can release the information. There were no such protections in this legislation either. So I probably, in addition to the cost, I think that the biggest issue is the issue associated with if this would just change the demeanor of this program, change the purpose of this program, and could actually turn the public against these cameras. Right now, I think the public does sort of appreciate what these cameras do, the function they serve. If they now learn that these cameras are going to start recording images, et cetera, they may be much more of a concern. So we'd like to keep a good thing good, but again, these are just some of the issues that we've spotted in this year.
Thank you, John, for that explanation. Does anyone on the committee have any questions of the delegate? If not, I will move that we lay this bill gently on the table.
Second.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I said, I brought this to your attention. I'm not sure if you had this issue discussed before, but I think going forward at some point, it would be a decent conversation for us to have in terms of what the policy ought to be. But I thank you for your time.
Delegate, I truly understand their concerns, VDOT's concerns, and I think you've heard that, and we can all discuss that and take it into consideration in future time, okay?
Thank you.
All right, I think we're ready to vote. Everyone now vote?
So yes.
Yeah, take it.
The motion passes 6-1.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, I
Delegate
got
King,
the
you want to
choice.
present? You want to try your luck again?
Yes, sir. One out of two ain't bad. Okay, the House Bill 1927. This is a bill that was brought to my attention by a constituent of mine who's here, and at the right time, I'd like for Mr. Cassidy to speak on this. But as you might recall, a few years ago, we added, as part of the driver license and state ID program, we added a couple of designations for those people that have certain disabilities in addition to hearing impaired. So we add now autism as well as, I think, there's insulin was already in place, and then we had autism and maybe one or two other categories. This proposal would add to that, just for the state ID purposes, not for the driver license, but the state ID portion of that ID program that we have, the visual, those people who are blind or vision impaired, so that designation would be on the driver license, on the state ID card. And the reason is, as you'll hear from Mr. Brandon Cassidy, for those people who have different disabilities, there are various different categories and groups of folks that work with each other. But even among those communities with disabilities, there's a little bit of less of a unity than there ought to be as they work with each other. And so to the extent that we're identifying in the state ID card certain disabilities and not others, especially when they're dealing with government, it may be helpful for them to have a kind of a unified approach. And so that's the best I can explain it, but if, Mr. Chairman, if it's okay for the committee, I'd like to turn this over to my constituent, Mr. Brandon Cassidy, who's down here.
Sure. Okay, Brandon Cassidy.
Hi. I'm really happy to come and speak to you guys about this. My cousin, who is partially blind, he can see out of the corner of his eye, brought this to my attention over Thanksgiving. And I said, you know what, we can do that. So, the way we do it is, we kind of add piece by piece these different designations to the ID card. I have an ID card, but we don't have visual impairment on there, and I think it would be helpful for not only your law enforcement, but your transportation, movies, everybody, just so that when these people are out in public, you know that, or they can check and say, this person is blind, and it's confirmed on their ID, right? It's confirmed on their ID, so that then you can say, okay, this person gets reduced fare on travel or something, right? And something like that, which you would already do if you knew. But right now, that designation isn't on there, so you have no idea, you have no way of knowing. And so what we're trying to do is just make it easier for the state to designate that these people have these things. So then, when you're servicing us, regardless of anything else that's a part of us, race, religion, whatever, you just have that designation on there saying we're blind, and we've got to have this, and it makes it so much better for our different communities, right? Because disabilities don't discriminate, but people do based on your disability. So that's a major issue for us. If there are any questions, please let me know.
Great,
Thank you,
thank you.
Thank you very kindly.
So, Mr. Chair, the bottom line is that for both the driver license and for ID cards, we already have certain designations. Obviously, some are for driver's license, some are for both. And right now, we already have insulin-dependent diabetic, we have hearing impaired, speech impaired, intellectual disability, and now autism spectrum. We would just be adding blind and vision impaired as part of that, only on the state ID portion, so that the folks who are in that community can use that in an official way to say, yes, I do have this disability. That's really all the bill does.
Thank you, Doug. Commissioner Holcomb, would you like to enlighten us?
Mr. Chairman, Rick Holcomb, D&D Commissioner. While we have no formal position, the delegate outlined it perfectly. There are 5 conditions that currently carry a 9 code on the front of the credential that is then decoded to the specific item. This is very consistent with what we've previously done, and more than happy to answer any
You don't
questions.
foresee any additional cost or any problems, do you?
None that we can absorb.
Okay,
At
great.
minimum programming, it's just adding an additional item to the code. We've talked to our driver license vendor, who also produces the IDs. No additional cost.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Holcomb. Does anyone on the committee have any questions?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What are the 9?
It's actually 5, but we're using the code 9
Oh, you're
as
okay.
compared to.
So what are the 5?
The 5 are insulin-dependent diabetic, hearing impaired, speech impaired, intellectual disability, autism spectrum disorder. Those are the 5 that are currently in the code. This would become the 6, but they all carry the 9 code. Then when you turn the credential around, it says which one of these 5 or 6 applies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Commissioner report. Commissioner report, have a second? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, okay, we'll vote. Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you, Mr.
Delbert
Chairman.
King, thank you.
Thank you, members, and
Congratulations.
thank you to the Uber chairman here. Now I got all the bad bills out of the way, you can pass the rest of them, right?
Understand. All right, Delegate Yancey, House Bill 1768.
Hey, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, House Bill 1768, this bill removes an unnecessary regulation by incorporating the 2017 Department of Motor Vehicle Task Force report that facilitates several thousand operators and drivers across the Commonwealth. This issue now provides buyers of used cars who know precisely what they are getting in terms of miles traveled, and the bill will also take the statute and update it by eliminating the outdated requirements. In other words, when you have an odometer, historically the problem was, it was unclear what it would say. Now you have, within light of electronics, you can now know precisely what it is. It would remove some of the stigma that taxi cab drivers were having to try to sell their vehicles. And we believe that now that's in conforming with the DMV report, this will facilitate the ability for these TNC drivers to be able to sell their vehicles on market. So any questions, if you have any answer, I believe we have some representatives of the industry who speak to the bill as well as Department of Motor Vehicles.
Okay, thank you, Delegate. Who's here to speak to the bill? Commissioner Holcomb, do you have anything to share about this bill?
Mr. Chairman, again, we have no position, just some factual. Out of the database of 7.9 million vehicles, what the delegate is covering is about 1,500. So very small percentage, obviously, of the total fleet.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience like to address this piece of legislation? Hearing none. Anybody on the committee have any questions?
Motion to report?
Motion to report. And a second. All right, thank you. All in favor, signify by saying aye, or report on electronic voting board. Okay. Reports 7-0.
Mr. Chairman, members, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Moving down the list, next we have Delegate Mieres. Jason, I'm gonna ask that your bill go by.
That's fine, Mr. Chairman, we're going for 5 minutes.
Okay. All right, we have a second for that motion.
Second.
Okay, motion second. Aye for the day. We have motion voice vote. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Jason. Delegate Bloxham, I think your bill is, you've asked for your bill to go by for the day also, haven't you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir,
You're next
Mr.
on the
Chairman.
list.
Yes, sir.
That would be House Bill 1780, and it's by for the day also. Delegate Brewer's bill is next on the list. Delegate Brewer has also asked for her bill to go by for the day. That's House Bill 1846. No, I'm sorry, I apologize. I'm gonna lay Delegate Brewer's bill gently on the table. Have a second?
Second.
Okay. All right. We do have to vote on that. Yep. Delegate Brewer's bill lay gently on the table. We're ready to vote. And motion carries 7-0. Lay Delegate Brewer's bill on the table. That brings us to Delegate Ferris. And Delegate Ferris has asked that his bill, 1697, go by for the day. So we're gonna take it by for the day also. You have a second on it? All right, I'll move with like Delegate Ferris's bill on the table, by for the day, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, voice vote. All right, let's see. That brings us down to Delegate Leffers, Jay.
Actually, Jay Jones is there.
Oh, okay.
No, I
I've got
defer.
Leffers signed up next, I'm sorry.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I've got
him.
Jay Leffers signed up next.
This is quick. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this bill came to me from a constituent of mine who was awarded the Navy and Marine Corps Medal. He's asked that license plate be created by DMV to honor those who receive this medal by their application. There is a substitute for the committee, and I would ask that y'all put that before you.
Motion to adopt substitute?
We have a motion to adopt the substitute, have a second? Second? All right. Need a voice vote. Voice vote, all in favor of accepting the substitute, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Take your time, Bob. We have to give Bob a few minutes to get the substitute online.
Okay.
Bear with us, our Delegate Leffers.
I knew everything maybe it's just a little slower in Southwest.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's a good thing.
That's a good thing. You're right, that was a laugh.
Let me know when you're ready, Cheryl.
Got it, Bob?
Yes.
We got it online, we're live now. You can go ahead and tell us what the substitute does.
It says the only thing the substitute does is it quantifies that the first plate issue would be free of charge. And that subsequent plates, their DMV would be able to assess a fee for that. So if someone applies, because they have that metal, and they have 5 cars, they can put 1 plate on the car for free, but they want a plate for every car. And it's
They have to pay for that, there's a fee. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Holcomb, do you have anything to say in regard to this bill?
Mr. Chairman, Rick Holden, D&V Commissioner. First of all, just to thank the patron for honoring these heroes in this way. There is some inconsistency throughout the code on how we honor these folks. We appreciate the delegate honoring these the same way that the Purple Heart is honored. Again, we have no official position, but we just thank you for working with us on that.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you,
you.
my constituent, for serving and asking to bring it.
Sure, thank you, delegate. Okay, anyone have any questions of the delegate?
Motion to report?
Report and second. Okay, we'll vote.
substitute.
Yeah,
As
yeah,
the
with
substitute.
with substitute, correct. Okay, we're open to vote. All right, report's 7-0, report. Thank you, delegate.
I think the committee.
Okay, we have Delegate Fowler next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Bill 1865, similar to some we had the other day, last year, but anyway, it has to do with the trespass towing, and what this bill basically does, it sets a statewide cap of $150 for every locality. That's the current fee for trespass towing. General Assembly's, of course, that cap has been in place for like 20 years, you know. We don't change any of that in this legislation. There's a few localities that set lower rates, but only if they have one of these local towing boards. Therefore, when the state rate changes, you know, now it affects basically 95% of the Commonwealth. Here's where the genesis or the reason for this bill. Unfortunately, some of the localities that do have trespass towing are those that are the largest, most populous counties, and therefore the most expensive, you know, for the tollers to operate, you know, profitably. So the real effect of this process is just that the most expensive areas to operate have the lowest towing rates. So again, so what we're trying to do with this bill is so that the towers can be able to retain good employees and continue to work, purchase new equipment, maintain their yards. And I ask you just to support this bill and just set a statewide rate of $150 across the board. And that's basically what the bill does. I have my friend Matt Pinko is here with the towing and the recovery people, and I have some towers here, you know, if you want to ask me any questions or. That's the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Matt Bento representing the Northern Towing Coalition.
One other thing, and I believe there's some amendments with the substitute.
That's correct.
There is a substitute.
Yes, sir. We
Okay,
need
we
more
need a
amendments.
substitute. So the substitute is now before us. Okay, so I will move to accept the substitute.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion is now properly before us. Now You have to bear with us a few minutes, Bob.
Yes, sir.
I have to enter-
Yes, sir,
enter
Mr.
the
Chairman.
substitute.
You're moving light speed,
Best
doing
time to
great.
Review it a little bit.
Okay, well, there we go. Here's postage.
So it's pretty much technical in motion, so I think we're fine with the amendment. Here's the substitute.
We're good.
We're good, okay. All right, now, does someone want to testify? We're now good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is John O'Neill. Appreciate you allowing me to speak here today. I met with all of you, I believe, in private. Thank you for your time. Last year, I came down here in an effort because for 9 years, the industry in which I work in had not received a pay raise. The state rate was at $135. So I came down here last year in an effort that a bill that passed and the state rate went to $150. But because of that effort and the locality, some language that was left in the code allowed the municipality where I operate to not allow us to receive that pay raise. I've got 28 employees. 34 children under the age of 18 go with those employees. So for nearly a decade, my employees have never received a raise or any benefits. I'm here today to ask you for your support to help me get to where I can do something for my employees and level the state fee at a competitive rate that will stay the same for all of us towers statewide, instead of having a municipality that decides to get together and decide that they do not want for you to operate. I'm the most expensive place to operate in the state of Virginia and Arlington County. The cost that I have for my business far exceed anywhere else in the Commonwealth. And I'm here today hoping that you'll support me in my efforts. Thank you.
How many records do you have?
I have 7.
7 records. How many employees do you have?
28.
28 employees.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anyone else in the audience here want to speak to this issue? Anyone from the county? Arlington County, you said?
That's where I operate, yes,
You
sir.
operate in Arlington?
Yes,
Is
sir.
anyone here from Arlington County to address the committee? Hearing none. Are there any questions that,
Again, this is just limited to trespass towing. If they're involved, the police, if they're towing somebody or anything like that, it's strictly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but trespass towing, you're under a contract with various folks to basically,
Contract for every towing that we do. This has nothing to do with police towing whatsoever. It's-
so you contract with Arlington County to tow?
No, sir, private property owners.
Private property owners?
Mhm.
Okay. And Arlington sets the max charge, you can charge up to
The state rate sets the
$135.
max rate of $150. However, there's language that was left in the code that enabled Arlington County to leave my rate at $135. So while the rest of the state, 95% of the state, was able to raise their fee to $150, I was made to be kept at $135. This would fix that problem.
Okay.
I think it was a similar bill last year. I was one of maybe 2 out
have
of
to do with, I
100.
think, one transportation district.
And I'm gonna keep my vote consistent. In Stafford County, our tow board, maybe they should come see how it's supposed to work. Our tow board gets along pretty well. One of my biggest towers has actually asked me to continue to leave them with the authority for the local tow board to do business how they have, and it seems to have worked. So maybe if this doesn't make it all the way through, we can have a connection there and see if the 2 boards can get together and work out a better solution. But I just wanted you to know that's why I'm
Sure, no, that's fine.
stay consistent.
You are paid additional compensation for after hours and on holidays, is that
Yes,
correct?
sir. Yes,
The
sir.
additional 25, which gets you to the 150.
That's flat state rate, yes, sir.
And that's also in code.
Right, okay. All right, what's the pleasure of the committee?
Commissioner report?
Motion report.
Second.
Motion report and second, okay. With the substitute. Yep, thank you, Bob. You're very good at your job. I love it. That's why we keep you here, Bob. All right, we're ready to vote. Everyone has voted with me. Okay, the motion to report carries 6-1.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, thank you, committee, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming down today.
Thank you.
Great.
Next is Delegate Jones, House Bill 1664. Delegate Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm here this afternoon to present House Bill 1664, but it is my understanding that the speaker would like for us to report and re-refer this to courts of justice. I'll give you a brief background on what the bill does. Currently, in Virginia, if you have a non-motor vehicle drug offense, those offenders can petition the court to get a restricted license. What this bill would seek to do is to fill a gap in exists currently, where if you have a non-motor vehicle drug offense from out of state, or out-of-state district court, or a state court, and you then become a Virginia resident, those folks can't petition to get restricted licenses, and all we're trying to do is make sure that we are filling that gap for those folks who move to Virginia, who want to be able to get to and from work, despite their wrongdoing in the other courts.
So Jay, clarify for me, or Delegate, let's keep this professional. If I were a resident of North Carolina and got a marijuana charge there, or a drug-related charge there, and then moved into the Commonwealth of Virginia, your bill would allow me to petition the courts to get a suspended license in Virginia?
Correct, it's a restricted Virginia license.
Okay. Do we currently, Delegate, allow that for first and second offenses if you're charged in the Commonwealth?
I would defer to the commissioner, who might have a couple of
Okay,
additional facts
thank
on
you.
that.
Mr. Chairman, Rick Holmes, DMV Commissioner, just a slight variation of what the patron said. What it deals with is Virginians, all Virginians. If I'm smart enough to get convicted in Virginia, I have the right to have the judge give me a restricted license. If in fact I get convicted because I'm on the GW Parkway and I get convicted in a U.S. District Court in Virginia, you can't get a restricted license. If I'm further not smart enough and I go over into Maryland or the district and get convicted, I don't have the same rights as of every other Virginian because I've picked the wrong place to be convicted. What this does is provide sort of a even situation for all Virginians. It came to the delegate's attention through a number of judges at our judicial conference that we had down in Norfolk this year, saying that they'd like to have the discretion to treat all Virginians the same way.
He said it better than I did.
Seem like I already
You said
did.
it well, though.
Virginia.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Mr. Chairman, I would love a favorable recommendation from this committee, but it's my understanding that the speaker would like this to be referred to the courts committee because this deals with 18.2 and not 46. I wish I didn't have to, but
so we
I know he's in charge.
We will report this out of this committee favorably,
Okay.
and then refer it to courts.
That's fine.
So do I have a motion?
So, second.
Have a motion to report, have a second. Okay, on board. Yes. Report and substitute on this one. No substitute. Report and refer. Report and refer to courts. Yes. Yeah, I guess we have to refer.
Just gonna report it out this
We'll report
subcommittee.
and refer to the full committee. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you.
This
He doesn't need to
legislation
make an
must vote.
appearance.
Pardon?
He does not need to make an appearance.
I'm on the committee, so I'll be there.
You still don't need to come.
Now I gotta be there for my towing bill.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
you got it. All right, everyone vote, please. Yes. That was report 7-0. Okay. Good deal. All right, John, you said Delegate McGuire? There he is. John, how are you, sir? Bill McGuire has House Bill 2039.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, House Bill 2039 is a supplemental motor vehicle sales location car shows. Basically, this legislation would allow a dealer participating in a new car and truck auto show to obtain an off-site license without a notice and offer requirements. Typically, dealer sales activity must occur when the dealer is licensed at their dealership. Dealers can then apply for an off-site sales license under certain circumstances. For an off-site sale of used vehicles beyond a dealer's locality or contiguous locality, dealers must provide notice to other dealers and an opportunity to participate in the sale. So again, this legislation would allow a dealer to participate in a new car and truck auto show to obtain an off-site license without the notice and other requirements. Now, we have two amendments to this. They're small amendments.
2 line amendments, okay.
Yes, and I also have some folks here that could answer questions on this, help us out with this.
Motion to adopt the amendments.
Yeah, we need a motion to adopt. Bob, you need to report these also?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion to adopt the amendment second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, motions are now before us. Only the substitutes are down there. Yeah, she's gonna read the amendments to us, please.
Line 42, after motor vehicles, insert that are late model vehicles as defined by section 46-1600. On line 43, after show, insert that is sponsored by a statewide or local trade association of franchise dealers and held within the geographic area of the dealer members of such association.
Okay. Any questions on the amendments? Good. Okay, so the amendments are now properly before us. Does anyone in the audience just address or speak in favor or against this bill?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Tommy Lukic with the Virginia Auto Dealers Association. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I would also like to thank the patron for this bill, Delegate McGuire, for all of his hard work in getting this forward, and I'm happy to entertain any questions that you all might have.
Support? Anyone have any questions?
Very much support, yes.
Okay, good.
Um,
Rob,
Yes, sir. So we put late model in that, so we're not going to go after any older cars than that? I mean, it's not for...
That's correct. And that amendment came after agreement and working with the Virginia Independent Auto Dealers Association as well. So,
Spock, you have something you'd like to share?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say thank you to the patron, Mr. Lucas, working with the VIADA, and I think we protected their issue.
Good. Good. Any questions of Mr. Lucas and Mrs. Spock? Mr. Report? A motion to report. Second? Second? Okay. You ready, Bob? Okay, everyone please vote. Report 7-0. Thank you, Delegate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Lucas. Appreciate you all being here. That's all the business will come forward. That's all the business.